Hey there, folks. This is Kevin Madison from Project Dragonfly. I hope you enjoy this podcast about Dragonfly community members doing inspiring work. If you have ideas for a guest or want to be more involved in this podcast, please feel free to directly email me. Thanks again for listening and enjoy the episode. I'm so excited to be sharing this interview with Chris and Lynne Myers. They are, for those that do not know, they are the founders of Project Dragonfly. I've worked with them for over a decade. They have created together through their outside of the box thinking, they have created a master's program that is now the largest at Miami University and also is the largest in the world dedicated to social and ecological change. So this was a fantastic conversation, in my opinion, for anyone interested in Dragonfly and how dreams can come to fruition. And also anyone that's a fan of origin stories. I love a good origin story myself, and hearing how the early ideas for not only the graduate programs with Project Dragonfly, but also their early work with children's books. Yes, they have published several children's books. Their National Science Foundation grants going after the big money to make these kind of new programs available. Creation of the Dragonfly magazine for children, featured the first magazine of its type ever to feature scientific investigations of children alongside major scientists. And also their work collaborating with many zoos and botanical gardens and international conservation organizations and individuals. I hope you enjoy this conversation. It's an inspiration for many of us, and it really does show how it can begin with just a simple idea and then a lot of dedication through time. So with that said, without further ado, here's my interview with Lynne and Chris Myers. All right, Chris and Lynne Myers, thanks for joining the podcast. So nice to be doing this.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're happy to be here.
always
Yeah,
talking about Dragonfly. So
that's right. This is definitely like the origin story. So I definitely think we have a lot of students and alumni who maybe have never met the two of you. And so listening to this will give them a sense of how Dragonfly began. But before getting to all that, I was thinking we'd start with a lighter topic and just see if you guys have a favorite ice cream flavor that you're partaking of at this point in time. I know you're Graders. I think you're Graders fans.
a hard question. You probably started
It's a
with
rough
the
one.
hardest of the
Yeah.
questions.
We're not going to get past this one. I would say Ben and Jerry's Americone.
Nice. Solid choice. Yes.
And for me, it's between Graders is definitely the Cincinnati and the Fiona. There's a Fiona flavor, and then also Jenny's Brambleberry. Those are two, and actually they go well together if you need to
Ooh,
balance and contrast, I guess.
awesome. Awesome. Yeah. The Jennies, I feel like I need to get to more often in my life. But we are Ben and Jerry's family primarily. And we did get into, I saw a Breyers I couldn't resist last night, actually, which was apple pie caramel. It wasn't that great. It wasn't that great. But that's, if it's different, I have to try it. Okay. Well, with that important information out of the way, so maybe, I've been working with Dragonfly now for like 10 and a half years. I have my version of the origin story of how this all started, but I know it's not fully accurate. So I'm just curious, I mean, in your minds, and you might have slightly different perspectives on this, but like, how did it all start? And what can you share about that?
Are you going to go start at Western?
Well, yeah, sure. But it was West. Yeah. So there was the context. There was definitely different, elements in our life in context that all kind of came together, at one time. And part of that was the Western college program back then was the School of Interdisciplinary Studies. It's changed since then a bit, but one of the great things about Western is that it was interdisciplinary. So a faculty member, like if I was in a just started off in a traditional bio department, the idea of starting sort of a kids magazine might have been a little bit too far afield. But within an interdisciplinary studies, which really focused a lot on social action and environmental issues as well, that was part of it. And when we were able to, at that point, once we had the idea for the magazine, there was somebody, Carolyn Haynes, language arts. She was like in the office in the same hall. And then, Hayes Cummins is a physical scientist and a great investigator. And then Chris Wolf, cognitive psychologist, and also good with the web stuff way back when the World Wide Web was still pretty early on. And so basically everybody was sort of in the same building, including the very enthusiastic and interdisciplinary and lively students. So that was definitely part of the context. What else?
Well, part of it too is the going further back is that we were students, undergrads, when we both landed in the School of Interdisciplinary Studies. So that's where we actually met. We lived in the same dorm. The boys were separated, on one floor and the girls on the other floor. But yeah, I wanted to make sure that they all knew that we were undergrads here.
So long history. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And Western, just if folks don't know, is a part of Miami University. It was originally its own college. And I don't know what year it was around when it was incorporated into Miami University, but it retained that, sort of different cultural vibe, I guess, to education and approach to education. So, okay. So you both met through the Western program at Miami University as undergraduates. And then, so take us from there. You're exposed to it as students, that style of education, and you listed all those individuals that helped develop the program eventually. I don't know if any of them were your professors early on as undergraduates or whether that connection came later.
Yeah, no, nobody was, none of those were our professors when we were students, but there were faculty there when we came back and taught at Western. Yeah, there were definitely faculty that we had, which was kind of a fun piece of that. So yeah, and after Western, there was kind of the grad school piece. So I was trained. I went to Vanderbilt. Lynne was interested. Her senior project was writing oriented. So she figured she could write anywhere. So she came down with me to Vanderbilt. I was in grad school, mostly focusing on community ecology and desert ecology, and particularly scorpions. Yeah, so that was a very, very traditional ecology and evolutionary biology background. So I felt from when we were students, it was everywhere, interdisciplinary. You could bring in a lot. During grad school, it was very, very focused and research oriented. But then during that period, we also went out of the country. So if you can imagine, I grew up in Ohio and
Maryland,
right? And I think this was also the first time out of the country for both of us, was going down to Mexico for Baja, which is the site of one of our core Earth expeditions courses. And that all started, it was sort of like a payback in some ways, because that really transformed our lives, because it was amazing. We went to a field course with my advisor, and I was a TA on that, and just everything, coming from Cincinnati, everything was different. It was experiential, it was cultural, it was ecological, just all this things happening, and just even so much learning happening in such a short period of time. And also, in some ways, it was the first time, I guess, we really connected that learning can happen and probably should happen outside the classroom, right? I mean, that's where the world is, that's where the issues are. And it didn't really dawn on us full. I think we kind of felt it, but not cognitively developed the conceptual framework around that. But we definitely instinctually, we always talk about we were born kind of forged in the fires of Baja. We were camping out as very poor grad students,
living in a palapa, under a palapa on the beach, and going out every night, searching for scorpions with our black lights all by ourselves. And I want to also mention the debt we owe to Gary Polis, who was Chris's advisor in his PhD program, because he was instrumental in introducing us to Baja and through his scorpion research, Gary's scorpion research that he'd done actually all over the world, pretty much. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Gary, and it's people listening to this might have been on the Baja program. It's amazing Earth expeditions. I've taught that course a number of times, and you go down there to Bahia de los Angeles and little town, little pueblo, where the Vermilion Sea and Field research station is, where there's a Polis room, as sort of a small museum in honor of him. And he did, kind of tragically pass away, as you both know. But we read on that course, and I know, Lynn, you've built the reader for that course, the course reader. So, but I think it's so wonderful how we read, Chris, your thesis work, publications from your dissertation thesis. And then as you go along, you read some of Gary's early ecology work, which was like incredibly, for me as an ecologist, thought-provoking, about islands and island biogeography and like how it does or does not apply in that system and why. So we always have good conversations about that. Lynn, I am curious, and we'll come back to that because I want to talk more scorpions and Baja. But Lynn, how did you go from Maryland? Like, what drew you to Miami University? I don't know if I've ever heard this part of it.
Well, it's somewhat circuitous. So I grew up in Maryland, and I knew that I didn't want to be, I wanted to get away to go to school. Yeah. I didn't want to hang around in Maryland. Not that there's anything wrong with Maryland, but I was ready to not be there, like close by my family, and to just really get out into the world. And my father, unbelievably, had, so when I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go, what colleges to apply to and stuff, my dad mentioned Miami University, which I had never heard of. And he, believe it or not, was the editor for a book series for the bicentennial. And while he was editing that, he read about Walter Havighurst and who was at Miami University. And so Dad, was like, I think it'd be really great if you went to Miami University because Walter Havighurst was there and he's a friend of mine and whatever. And I was happy to be 500 miles away from my my parents and family at that point. So I applied to various places and got into Miami. And then we went and visited, my parents and I went and visited. And I realized when I got there, I can't remember. Oh, it was Terry Perlin from the School of Interdisciplinary Studies was like the advisor there. So he started talking about the Western College program. And it was exactly what I wanted, small seminar style classes. We all lived together in the same dorm. We all had the same classes together. So it was a smaller section of the university. So it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm in this giant dorm with 150 other people and you don't really connect very much. But it was just right. And I really liked the ideas about, engaging intellectually with all these other people who were from other disciplines as well. And it was just right. So that's how that came about.
Yeah, oftentimes we say that like Dragonfly in many ways is the kind of an expansion of a lot of the Western philosophy. That's sort of the time, when experimental, unfortunately, a lot of those programs, they grew up in the 60s, more liberal arts and really, I think lively intellectual institutions. In fact, when I went, in undergrad, first I started off at University of Cincinnati and then the University of Florida, and both of those in very traditional bio, like especially in Florida. I went to University of Florida because of a bio, but it was 300 people in the class. Nobody would ever ask you what you thought you could go through. So then when I transferred and entered into Western, it was completely different. Like all of a sudden, okay, I'm sold. This interdisciplinary intellectual community piece is definitely, different learning styles and preferences, but that was definitely made all the difference for me. It probably kept me going.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I went to Earlham College, small liberal arts college, and traveled, as a part of totally transformative for me. I think probably a lot of people that have either had that small liberal arts, that discussion-based intellectual kind of conversation in college, and then certainly with the travel experiences you described with Baja later on for you, it just can change your whole life trajectory, right? And be this inspiration for this thing that then started forming of Dragonfly, this idea. So, okay, so Baja is where, how many years it must have been 5 or 6 years, I would think you must have been going down there. Is that right?
At least. All right. Well, actually, there was actually sort of a year, which was also definitely part of the roots of this too. There just had many different little seeds, I guess, because the dissertation was pretty far along, and one of the faculty members at Vanderbilt said, "Hey, there's this Luce Scholar program, Henry Luce, who founded Time Life magazine and had a family history in China with his dad." Really thought that Western people in pre-professional and professional roles should be exposed to Asia. So basically, I was a Luce Scholar, which was really big for me. I was a really neat. I was surprised to get it, but it basically paid for a whole year. And they placed us doing orangutan conservation with the National Park and Wildlife Office in Sarawak in Borneo, which is, by the way, Borneo is another. We have a course in Borneo as well. So all these things,
you can see these seeds
come back.
So the Luce Scholarship, there's only 15 people selected every year nationally. Now they've bumped it up to from when you were like 20 now or something.
But
wanted to say that.
It was a big deal. And what was neat too was also interdisciplinary, because like there was only 2 biology oriented. There's like most of them, like whether lawyers or in med school, or there are artists. An artist went to Bali, architect went to Thailand to do Wat restoration, that kind of thing. Business guy went to Korea, folklorist. But anyway, we went to Borneo. And then it was in our situation was actually even more. Like the Luce Foundation said, because we were living with Iban, a native group, and they told all the other Luce scholars, don't visit the Myerses because they're too far out. And it's too much. And of course, that made everyone come and visit. But then it was still an ecological. It was looking at, does shifting cultivation by this indigenous group of Iban, which is their traditional lifestyle, impact orangutan and other orangutan and other primate or wildlife populations in this area, which is a proposed national park. And it had a lot of implications, because then if you found out, because this is the only area, orangutans used to be throughout Sarawak, and basically the only main population that existed was wiped out throughout the state of orangutan populations. Only list in this one little watershed, Batangai, and its adjacent Lanja Kentamal wildlife sanctuary. So, but what that meant was working with the National Parks and Wildlife Office, going out, in the rainforest, Southeast Asian rainforest, we totally miscalculated, because we were used to desert. So I went out to these wildlife surveys. At one time I came back, I remember your look on your face, because it was like, okay, well, we'll go out, we'll do this for like 18, 20 days or whatever. So we go out in these little long boats out in the Iban, are making these, shelters for us out in the rainforest.
Out of trees and limbs and things.
It rained. It was like monsoon. I've never seen so much rain in my life. So like probably 80% of that time just sitting on my top. And then, leeches, which weren't used to, were like very prevalent in the rainy season. Almost, it was kind of a disaster. And I came back to see her, and I had lost. I only weighed, not much by then. And then I had lost like 25 pounds, during that time, because we were just eating rice with a little dry fish.
Oh man.
And I looked gaunt. And I had blood stains all over me, because there's no way to wash your clothes.
Wow.
The accumulation was like this bloody gaunt mess.
And Lynn, you didn't run for the hills then. You stuck with them.
I opened the door and I said, "What the hell happened to you?"
That was a direct quote. But what came out of that which was definitely a Dragonfly, hugely critical to all the things that went forward, is, it ended up, the ecological surveys were kind of important, and we could actually assess these primates in different, in primary forests versus secondary forests. But it turns out that no matter what you knew ecologically, you really wouldn't explain this existence of orangutans still in this area, because it was, basically it was the Iban and their behaviors, and specifically there was a cultural taboo against hunting orangutans in that area, because basically they had told us this story of an orangutan that was a famous Iban warrior that on his death turned into an orangutan. And they actually even told me to look out for the certain orangutan with this necklace, because that was the warrior. And I've had some of the Iban were saying, basically we had one guy told me he would rather shoot his brother than shoot an orangutan. That's how important this taboo was. And when you look about other forests and other areas, and you think about orangutans, they could live elsewhere. There's other forests in Sarawak, but that hunting and that taboo and that myth isn't there. And orangutans have a very slow population replacement rate, right? Because they're like us, like they have a 9-month gestation. They keep, too young around for like 7 years, and before the next, and so you take a species like that and you begin shooting it, and the populations, go down really quickly. Unlike a macaque, which reproduces so quickly, like rabbits, you can shoot a bunch of those and not hurt. And also just living and knowing the shifting cultivation, the very shape of the landscape, and what the orangutans have available, are all shaped by this indigenous group and what they're doing in their cultural belief systems, everything. That was where their conservation story was. And so it's funny, because a lot of field courses from universities are basically, and I taught these too at first, before we started putting the two things together. We go somewhere, neotropical, I taught one, the neotropical ecology, Costa Rica. You go there, bring some students from the States, 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever, teach them about the ecology of neotropics. They're done. That's it. That's no impact, not much of a cultural, other than, seeing some other people, but there's no community impacts of the whole, link between humans and ecosystems and all those connections, which obviously, are critical to a lot of the ecological issues, probably all the issues that we care about. Anyway, so that was another formative.
Well, yeah, I love that story. And so, you went in there thinking like primary versus secondary forest or old growth, that, these ecological factors might explain where the orangutans were or were not. And only through talking to the people that you find out about this cultural taboo of hunting that's probably had a much bigger factor. That is a great segue into, Dragonfly and this focus on communities and people and talking. And like you said, and even the way these field courses are built, where it's with a local partner. So it's not just the professor coming in, from the States or from wherever and reading from a textbook or lecturing from slides or whatnot, but actually meeting with people. So, I mean, was it at that point that for you, because I feel like, I mean, I know you're an ecologist by training and probably would put that, but I think of you as being more just focused on community engagement now. I don't know. Did you feel like at that point, a part of that ecologist side of yourself was like, I'm jaded now. It's all about people, or do you still feel that ecologist identity?
Oh, there was definitely a big identity conflict that transformed through all those experiences, including, and that's like in Baja, it was interesting because I was in the field a lot, you know, in terms of amount of time, because we were so focused on the scorpions and we were doing the markings and the everything else.
Experimental plots.
Yeah, but we didn't get, I mean, there were all sorts of Mexicans influencing and you know, right there around us, which we would say hi and buy Coke to and interact with somewhat, but we never like made the link. Like there wasn't the kind of cultural connections. And so that was, yeah, so it was definitely the Borneo experience where we both felt like, wow, there's some other questions, you know, here, which we have been missing in traditional science, you know, in the traditional science front. And then that did create a little bit of an identity crisis because, you know, most of the ecologists were really more, if you're not doing the science bit. But the other thing, which is really a story with Lynne too, right? We also, she was writing and we're together and we started writing children's books together, right? So that influence about the communication and sort of that side of expression, and each of those books too were more like an exploration that we did together. And I think that definitely helped, both put us into because remember, Dragonfly started with a magazine idea. And that wouldn't have happened had we not published books and we're looking for the next book project is really what happened. And maybe you can.
And then we were, what are we going to do? We've written some kids books, which was great. We loved it. And, but what are we going to do next? And Chris actually came out of the shower one day and said, I know, let's make a magazine where kids are the authors. And so really cool. That's fabulous. So then we just started thinking about how that would work and just turning it on its head so that the kids themselves were seen as valid investigators and scientists. And then, that their questions and their experiments were as valid as any grown-up scientists' investigations, and how could we showcase them and alongside one another so that the kids could see themselves in the same magazine, on the same pages as these adult, grown-up, sometimes famous scientists, and feel themselves to be part of that science community together with these grown-ups. Yeah.
It's so, Lynne, I mean, and I want to talk about Dragonfly magazine, but yeah, let's with the children's books. I mean, what was the first one, or what were the first couple, or, I don't know if people would know where to search, and what was that process like for you? I mean, Chris is covered in leeches and blood and doing his field work. And I don't know where you must have had an illustrator. You must have, how do you narrow down to a topic? Yeah. What was the process?
What is the process? Well, we pretty much just, we started out with the first one. Okay. The first one was McCreffy's Field. And it was it's a very short book. And the manuscript was all about following the ecological changes over the years on a farm in Ohio. And the farmer's name was Joe McCreffy. So the book was called McCreffy's Field. So again, it was sort of following the changes and through the seasons and through the years. And Joe McCreffy grows old And at the end of the book, he's sitting next to his barn, which now is faded and gray and was bright red in the beginning. But we wrote the manuscript and we just sent it off to Houghton Mifflin, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So we sent this thing. It's very short text, and of course, neither of us are illustrators at all. So we sent this to Houghton Mifflin, and the editor,
Matilda Welter.
Matilda
Welter.
right? Unbelievably, she wrote back and said, "We'd like to publish this."
Yeah.
We were jumping up and down and screaming when we got this. I'm pretty sure it was a letter, but the main thing was because it's a children's book and neither of us are illustrators, and she had the exact person that she thought would make the best illustrations for this particular book, and he's amazing.
Norman Chartier.
Thank you, Norman Chartier. In fact, we have a few of his original prints from the book. We bought them.
The wall, yeah.
Yeah, we bought them. I surprised Chris by purchasing one. I was very sly about it. I opened the book and I was like, which one of these pictures is your favorite? I really like this one. I really like that one. And he picked his favorite. And so I called up Norman Chartier and bought the picture and gave it to him for like a Christmas present or something. And then he did the same.
Yeah, I surprised her idol later year.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that was good.
I love that. Yeah, the story of sending it. When you were sending it, were you both just like to the publisher and you're like, well, what are the chances of this? Like very low percentage. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if
absolutely.
That was exactly it.
Throwing it out
Right.
there, and it's like,
although Lynne had built up some credibility though too with during those years, because she was writing while we were like in Borneo and stuff like that for some magazines like Discovery and some magazines,
Travel and Leisure, and some other organizations.
So
some plane magazines that are in planes that were about adventures in Borneo and other places.
So we had our copy of like the Writers Marketplace, and they already know, okay, this is how you do a query, and this is how you go through that process. And then so we sent that one. Yeah, it was totally shocking when they accepted it. And then the next one was Hyperion, which is a Walt Disney one. It was more fun, but it had an actual real Komodo dragon that escaped Rupert's reptile house, and the kid sees it go down into his basement, and he's sort of a St. George the Knight kind of character going down, seeing this Komodo down there, and then trying to convince his mom there's a dragon in the basement. So anyway, it's just a fun, all the way around fun kind of book. So each one
was that one was called the name of that one?
Turnip Soup, because because his mom sent him down to get some vegetables for some soup, but every time he went down to the vegetable that he was looking for was like kind of already
eaten by
yes.
or at least it was, he couldn't get down there to get it. So finally the turnip was the last one.
Turnip Soup is the first one that comes up on the Google search of Lynne Bourne-Myers and Chris Myers children's book. And I see it has 4.5 stars on Amazon. So that's cool. But McCreffy's Field is also good. I just Googled that to look it up. And I had looked at these years ago, I think. But what a fun thing to be involved with. So are there others? You all have worked on other children's books besides those two?
Yeah.
There was one. There was the young adult novel called Forest of the Clouded Leopard. So that was right out of the Borneo. It was it's fiction, and probably wouldn't even be looked at today, probably, but it was very much in those line of
Island of the Blue Dolphins.
Island of the Blue Dolphins was sort of an inspiration for, at least in terms of that. But it's a first person. And yeah, it was amazing. In some ways, I would say that was mostly because there's so much about the experience with Yvonne that was just like buzzing around in our heads that we didn't really have any other way to process, right? I mean,
Mhm.
and you could just write about, I mean, because they're so emotionally impactful and metaphorically impactful. And there are things about, that with living within a native group or an indigenous group, that, you just feel like there's so many things that we have forgotten or that we don't know or that we've, um,
And that we can learn.
yeah. And so in some ways it was sort of a story that's tried to see, I guess honor, I guess would be a way of saying it, the Iban that we had the privilege to spend time with. That's probably how I would phrase it. Yeah.
Very
Well,
cool.
There's something else. What's the other one?
And then, and then there was we did a book, more nonfiction. We had a couple of nonfiction. We had one on Galapagos.
Islands of Change.
That was a Hyperion book.
Ah.
Which is
Sounds familiar.
Same name as the Galapagos EE. Yeah, so a lot of these things keep coming back, right? And also, it's funny because while we were over there in Asia, we did our wrap-up session for the Loose Thing in Thailand, and then we went back on a Fulbright later, and then now that Thai course. And then I was also, we went to Yale for a year as an environment and visiting professor. I got a gig there working with Stephen Keller. But that's where Asia, Dr. Suryat Pajnard, who's our main, we met him there. He was a student in my class. And then the next semester we kind of co-taught. He was already a faculty at Mahidol University. Yeah, environmental education. He was already as visiting, and a professor at Mahidol University. Then he came to Yale, his PhD, and that's where we met. And then later on, all these things like circle around, just like the Baja in Thailand and the Galapagos. So many of these have just histories.
What got you to Galapagos initially? Was it writing that book that you decided to go there, or?
It was like actually what it was it was actually our editor. That was I think the only book that we were asked to write. So cool. This time it was the reverse. Our editor, Disney,
Hyperion,
had basically there was a guy named Nathan Farb who was kind of a famous landscape, because he goes out and takes these landscape pictures with this huge camera, and they're absolutely gorgeous. And he had, huge, collections, studies of the Galapagos Islands. And so Howard Reeves was the editor's name, wrote us and said we could actually use some text to go along with these photos to tell the story of the Galapagos.
And you get to go to Galapagos.
No, actually, that was
hilarious. We didn't go to Galapagos.
Oh, no.
We were going to use the Advance actually to go to the Galapagos, but then where a couple of things would happen. Just when we looked at the pictures, these huge landscape pictures, we realized that the story, and looked at also what was being, there were a ton of natural history and animal related, Galapagos kind of books out there. But what hadn't really been told is sort of the evolution and change geologically. Like these islands actually rise and they fall and they have their own. And that hadn't been told, and that really came out a lot in these huge, great, photographs. So we were basically telling like more of a 9 or 20 million year story, and that we didn't. And so the impetus or the need to actually go to the Galapagos to actually create the text.
Yeah,
and we were
actually in
Chile.
When
we used the Advance instead to do another book idea, which never got published, but we loved the around Mapuche and communal dream interpretation.
Yeah.
But we
were working on the Galapagos book while we were in Chile.
Yeah.
Wow, you were really, and I think it's amazing. You both said you had never left the country as kids, right? Before going to college, and then even getting to graduate school was the first trip. And then it sounds like over a period of, I don't know how long it was, but a few years, you started really just globetrotting, which is, yeah. It's easy to get.
Yes.
And when we came after grad school, when we looked around, we were basically, first of all, we were didn't know what we actually had a postdoc lined up in Namibia with the Desert Ecological Research Unit there, but in the Namib Desert, which is yet another
Connection.
yeah, Namibia connection. We have an EE in Namibia, but it paid almost nothing, right? And I didn't even know if we were looking. We didn't even know if we could get over there.
We had enough money to get there. Yeah.
But then we saw the job open up in the natural sciences at Western College program, and we said, "Oh, you know what? That we could explore sort of." Because we always work together, and this writing became so much in this cultural pieces, and all these other things were so much a part of our joint lives. And we already knew that we liked Western, and my family is still in Cincinnati, and so we said, okay, let's try that out, and so that's what got us back
to Miami, back to Western, but then able to take all this experience, this international, and this like connection with writing for children's books, and then listening to communities to inform, conservation and understanding of species, and all these field experiences and awareness, right? So it makes sense. It seems like the table was set for Project Dragonfly. So I have to ask you, why the name Dragonfly? Because I know a lot of folks ask that and don't know where it came from. What led to that?
That was Lynn's.
Yeah, that was so we were in our conference room in Peabody Hall, and we were proposing this idea about all of this and what about the magazine. So we wanted to do the magazine, and we had the go ahead. They were going to publish it and stuff. And so we were debating, sitting around the conference room, just debating, throwing out potential names. What about this or what about that? And at one point, we really liked the name Newt, except at that time frame, Newt Gingrich was very popular in the world, and we were like, we can't possibly name this thing Newt. So more names were sort of being thrown out, and I said, what about Dragonfly? And everyone sort of paused, and we're like,
no contentious politicians with that name at the time.
And then it was like, then we all started saying, yeah, they've got those big eyes, like they're investigating things, and they dart all around, and
they're cool.
They're pretty.
And the names, and also the name itself, we like the fact that it had dragon and fly, we thought were both very aspirational sorts of names. So it all
right.
But we didn't actually. That was when we were designing it for the proposal.
For the
NSF proposal.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's one of the most common tattoos that people get as well, and jewelry. It's certainly in a lot of places. I feel like I see Dragonfly beer. I see Dragonfly condiments. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of things with it. So you submitted the NSF grant for, what was that for? Was that for the magazine initially?
Yes. Yeah. That was the whole thing. I mean, so it was the idea of, okay, because that part of that was looking for the next book project, as Lynn mentioned. And then really, and that's what just part of it was also building frustration with how science was taught. I didn't like a lot of the science courses that were all like just in rooms, and then when I started to see, oh wow, it could be different. It could be a just active investigation of the world. And then when we were looking at all the different science books out there, it's always adults writing for kids, right? Adults here, and they're like telling the kids science, when science is really this joyous investigation of the world and sharing of knowledge. And how can that happen if kids are never given any media? There was no national forum for children's investigations, and that to me just spoke worlds, right? I think we both realize that's wrong. They're not knowledge creation. No wonder people flee from sciences in the junior high and high school, and they're given no voice. They're not given any kind of creative role. and everything, other than like canned labs and that was really, that I think was it. And then I think the other, go ahead.
Well, part of it was that, we were casting, I think, did I say this already? We were sort of casting about for, what will our next book be?
Yeah.
And then Chris had the idea, that, rather than us doing a book, why don't we give these kids an opportunity? Thank you.
All these stories.
Right as you emerged out of the shower.
Well, that's the thing with some of these stories. Some of these stories go back so many years. We probably told them like a zillion times. Some of them, but actually talking about it is so interesting. It's making me realize some of the different connections that we don't always knit together. So this is fun. But and it was so, and because we had those other faculty and students, and they all thought, this is a great idea. And we had done the children's book, so we had a little bit of credibility besides just the science research. We had so we thought that was an unusual thing for scientists to bring forward. And then we had to find a publisher. That was the next step, right? Well, actually, first was a big conceptual decision, like we want a national magazine for young investigators that publishes children. Do we include adults, right? That was a big dividing line, right? Because should this just be for children? But the more we thought about participatory education, is like, why would it just be? I mean, we weren't aware of any magazine or publication out there that published kids and adults. I mean, I still don't know of any that really put them side by side. But when we thought, if you really want a level playing field of knowledge creation where kids are valued as knowledge, then you don't put them in like the corner or you're only here. Why don't we just put them together and see what happens?
Had you at that point, were Mickey and Phoebe in the picture at that point, or your daughters, or what was that not? Because I just wonder how you were thinking about children and where that came from.
1994 was when the idea first came up, and in 1995 was when the grant was funded. So sometimes our first start was, and Mickey was born in 1994.
Yeah.
So basically, we were having two babies at the time.
I remember working in Peabody on the magazine, and I'd have a babysitter who would come and bring Phoebe or Mickey to me so I could breastfeed her at my desk while we were working on the magazine. And then take her away and swing on the Peabody swing porch up on the porch. Yeah. So,
and that was definitely
changed many a diaper on the Dragonfly table.
and that's definitely something that I'll personally never regret, is that decision, because then it was like, because do I just keep doing school, community ecologies, data collection on ecological systems only? Because at the beginning, we always said it was just, Dragonfly would just be, I thought it was temporary or a side project. I didn't know it would be all encompassing and take over everything. But one of the reasons that also having things fit, right? That I think is really important in life. And, like the kids' books we were able to do together, and we valued that so much. And that, just doing scientific research alone, was actually more distancing with what Lynne does, right? So she could have gone off and done just writing. But then the magazine actually combined both the science and the writing and the kids stuff, because we were having kids then. And you go, how fun would it be to be doing this for kids when we have kids? And so that sort of, that balance of work-life balance is definitely more than how much time you spend here versus here. It's about how you design your existence, basically. I don't know how to say, but basically, define your collective selves as you take the journey. I mean, that's
so. And what we found too, so we brought Mickey and Phoebe with us when we went on most of the exploratory planning, going to different locations and meeting with the partners, and where would, doing all the logistics about how would we run an EE in this country, and meeting with the potential partners and all of that. And Mickey and Phoebe were absolute ambassadors. They kind of made us they sort of like
the community
humanized.
These loved the kids. And so Mickey and Phoebe were our ambassadors who
open doors,
open doors that we probably never would have opened, just the two of us showing up. I mean, they just adored the kids. And
I love that. Yeah.
Mickey and Phoebe, like when we were in Mongolia, setting up the Mongolia class, there was a researcher who was there with his wife and his young baby. Actually, it was a baby, and their yurt had been flooded like the night or two before, and all of their gear was just completely soaked, and it was a mess. Everything ran down the hill. And so Mickey and Phoebe, so the parents were trying to clean all this up and fix everything, restore their yurt and things. And Mickey and Phoebe took their baby and played with that baby for like 3 days straight. And which was incredibly helpful to this family. And
how old were they at that time? About
oh geez,
they were like
6.
Yeah,
6 and 8.
Yeah,
something like that. And the mom came to me later and said, "This is the first time since this baby was born that I haven't had the baby on me all day long, every single day." And Mickey and Phoebe just absolutely loved it.
And there was also the communication with, like, when we showed up as a family committed to this community partnership, it just comes off differently, like a single academic who has this idea, right? I mean, it just communicates, this is something that they really believe in, which we all did, obviously. So,
well, that's lovely, because I think it's clearly, I'm sure it was a lot more work for, on the one hand, for you all to pack up the whole family when the kids were younger, and but it's great to see it as all the benefits that it did provide, the community building in particular. So that's great. I love that. So, okay. So the NSF grant comes in. When you get that notice that they're going to fund this magazine, I mean, do you remember your celebration or your reactions at that point?
It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, jumping and yelling and screaming, and it was,
But it wasn't an all at once either, though. It's like, because first they go, it's one of those things, we're interested, and then we actually went out and met with the program officer. First of all, it was big too when like an NSTA, National Science Teachers Association, agreed to come on with it. So that was one big thing, because we go, okay, now we have a respectable publisher. This thing would come out not from us in Miami, because we couldn't do that anyway, but somebody who already had science magazines, but really just for science teachers, and complement that, and it would be national immediately. So that was exciting, getting them on board. But then there was all this, like, is it really going to be funded or not? And the kind of negotiation, but it was well reviewed, and and I remember it was just a big. It was just a big deal. I remember the dean at the time. This might have been why we were writing the proposal, though. But it's all kind of, actually, it was a small token, but he ordered a pizza for us. We were up late working.
Okay.
I remember it to this day. So that's kind of a neat thing. But yeah, we were very excited. But and we didn't really know at that point, just like all those things, you never know where they were going to lead. We didn't know it would lead to the television show and the other stuff at that point. It was all just, oh my God,
Side Girls.
And it was a lot of work.
It was a ton of work.
Yeah, when it went away, we were thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do? Because there's nothing like the magazine is like, the deadlines, there's never a break, really. You're just all the time, you're always doing stuff. It was all encompassing. And then But then when the magazine stopped, we go, oh my God, what are we going to want to do? But we wouldn't have never been able to start really and done the graduate programs, for example, if the magazine was still going. So there is kind of a natural, it's, things seem, when things end, you think it's everything's ending, but it doesn't. Yeah.
Okay. So the magazine ran for how many years did that run for?
Like 95. I think we did a millennial issue. So like about 95 to 2000.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
And it was a monthly.
2001. Actually, 2001 would have to go. Yeah.
Okay. And it came out every
2
6
months.
years. Yep. 2 months. Yeah. Okay. Got it. So my math is a little struggling right now, but I think that's about 72 issues, something like that. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it sounds about right. I'm not sure if there might have been a one issue in the summer. We might have skipped one of the 2 months. I'm not sure, depending on the year. But yeah, it was about that. It all from the experiential side, it was just basically just never ending, because we would finish up one, send it out, and then you would always be thinking about the next issue's theme. Each one had a theme, and you would have to invite, different scientists and request, submissions
Now,
from kids.
I have to ask, I know you got a lot of big name scientists to join. Jane Goodall is the example I always bring up and hear about. I mean, what was it like when you heard back that Jane was willing to be a part of the magazine? And I mean, it takes gumption. I feel like even at that time, she was a huge name. She's only grown even bigger, but I'm sure it took some courage to want to write and say, hey, do you want to be in this new magazine we're creating?
It did. But we were rather fearless. Well, we were like, what the hell? I mean,
yeah.
You as well ask.
Yeah.
I know she's like, in the stratosphere, but why not? Why not give it a try and see whether she'd go for it or not?
We were definitely, I think that I don't think we're naturally that way. We're both like, we're kind of like, it's like socially, you can kind of tell we're not all that social in our personal lives, but we're definitely mission driven. So when it comes to like asking for something for like somebody to publish, we wouldn't hesitate anybody. I mean, we had all, and what was so great is we have like a 99%, doesn't matter how busy the scientists were, they were famous writers. We also had people who were writing other types, like nature writers, basically a 99%, even though they're not getting paid for it.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of time for them to write it, but it was, partly because of the mission. They knew they were being published with kids, for kids. And it was really kind of a hopeful thing to us about the scientific community, and the fact that all these professional scientists were willing to just drop everything, and write for us, and communicate their work, to these kids. That was really, really a neat thing to see.
Yeah. I think the hardest part for the scientists was we wanted them to be human, to talk to kids like regular people. And they kept wanting to use informal, very formal language. And so we would pose questions for them that would help reveal, and then we'd, have those answers that the scientists were giving us about, like, what did they do what was their favorite thing to do when they were a little kid? Some guy would, some famous scientist would say, I love to, go creaking and lift up rocks and see what was underneath, and all these kinds of things. But it was hard to get them to talk about themselves, without being the scientist who's whatever. It's
the training really beat the humanity out of you, I guess.
Yeah. The jargon and the training was all part of the things. It's interesting. Each of the in Lynn was every single piece she edited in that piece, and it was different challenges. She also like the children had their own, the young investigators had their own things to come back and ask them about and work through in the editorial process, and the scientists did as well. So yeah.
Well, and in our course readers for all our Earth Expeditions field courses, we have, peppered in there these Dragonfly magazine articles from, like you said, 1995 to 2001, and they hold up. And it's funny because when you read them, it's like, even as I'm reading it as an instructor, I'm like going through the articles and I read the peer-reviewed article, scientific article. I'm like, here we go. Got to get through this, slog through the reading. And then, I get to a Dragonfly magazine article and I'm like, thank goodness. It's like written in a way I can like breathe and actually in a very memorable way where it communicates some great concepts and scientific ideas. So I think it's a great style. It's
one of my favorite aspects of that was that we always included a photo of the scientists when they were a little kid.
Yeah, that is such a great touch. Yeah.
And we include them in the readers to this day, even with some of the some of our students might not necessarily be teaching, because this is that age group or whatever. But the media, you have to actually see that kids can write science. You have to physically see it and read it, because it's implicit. You don't know that there's a huge world of knowledge that you have excluded from your conceptual framework. And that's all the knowledge that kids generate as valid scientific knowledge. You don't even realize that that's not there. And so, that's why it's really important to us. And show the examples. Kids are writing, they're generating this knowledge, you're sharing the knowledge, and it goes side by side. And I learned just as much from some of the ones that the kids did as I do from the ones that the scientists did. So that's I think that's critical if we're going to move science along in terms of a participatory process in our education system.
Love it. Yeah, it's critical. And you say it perfectly. So take us to the transition, I guess. And if you want to talk about the TV show, but the graduate programs, and how that emerged and what that was like that first, maybe one of those first Earth expeditions being involved with, or anything that comes to mind as you started thinking about graduate education.
Well, I think I can hit the TV show in about just a really short, because it was just to tie it to the whole story together with the magazine. So it evolved into basically a guy named Richard Hudson, who used to produce Newton's Apple, which was the longest running science series on PBS, saw the magazine, approached us, said, "Hey, I think this would make a great TV show." We said yes, we think so too. And then we helped him, and we went in on another NSF grant, and it was funded, and it was fantastic in a way, because it basically, the TV has an authority with that audience in general. So all of a sudden we had a much bigger national audience, and you could see, oh yeah, kids as investigators had exactly the same philosophy as the magazine. They had real kids doing is, in fact, their thing is real kids, real science was sort of the tagline with that. So, and then we have like 7 seasons, which is huge for a PBS series, or really any television series, a ton on lots of different topics. We have all that to draw on. So really, really, I think neat thing to see evolve. Yeah, and Side Girls was a spinoff. So that was neat, but that was all media side. We're not television producers, but we, that was Dragonfly started. And then in the meantime, though, because we're ecologists and writers and had done these field courses and field experiences, we had just come back from, we did a Fulbright in Thailand, I mentioned earlier. And when we came back, and we were thinking, well, and we were doing these field courses, but the things were not melded yet. Like we didn't take the participatory principles that were at the heart of Dragonfly magazine and television and meld them with the field course things, which we loved, but were nevertheless, basically academics bringing a group and pretty isolating from the culture, doing the ecology piece and bringing it back. It wasn't at all the sort of shared knowledge creation with the people And for that, we really needed, we were looking for a partner at that point that had both local, that had conservation and interests, and also public education interests. The Cincinnati Zoo came to mind because I grew up there. We've spent time there, and it's the nearest institution. They have global conservation, so that was really the beginning. We went down, talked to Dave Janicki and Thane Maynard at the they didn't run the show at that point, but they but they were the right people to talk to at that point and could get things moving. Yeah.
So that was when we had just recently gotten back from Thailand. And so Mickey and Phoebe were attending the zoo camps at the Cincinnati Zoo. So rather than drive down to Cincinnati and drop them off, drive home to work or whatever, and then drive back down and pick them up again, we decided to just hang out. We would drive them down and we'd hang out the whole day at the zoo. And so while we were doing that, over there by the panda exhibit, because we love the red pandas, was where we really hatched this idea, of having working together with the Cincinnati Zoo to offer these workshops. And so we were talking about it, and then we just like walked over there
and sprung it
on the door.
Really? Oh, I didn't know it was the same day. I love that. Oh my God. So who did you talk to then? Was it
actually, I think we talked to Thane first, and he told us to talk to Dave too. I mean, it was basically there was the same. It was the same because they were good friends and working together, and so it was basically sort of a joint. I forget exactly the first mention, which one it was to, but it was that same day that in talking with both of them.
Well, I have a fondness for red pandas generally, but also the red panda exhibit at the Cincinnati Zoo, because I have heard that story before, and it's kind of its own little separate area of the zoo. It's a little off the track, and I kind of try to envision this moment where you have this graduate program that's now grown, and a couple decades later is nearly 1,000 graduate students, 2,000 alumni. So the rest is history. And I know there's a lot more we could talk about, but I do think we need to start to kind of wrap it up. And maybe we can do more in detail, because I feel like there's a lot more to get into there with the whole Dragonfly, the Global Field Program and the Advanced Inquiry Program and all of that, like figuring out those early zoos that became a part of it, growing the field courses from just a few to what it is now with 15 or 16. But I don't know, for this, as we wrap up, is there anything you would like to, say or add for the early history of Dragonfly and your sort of career trajectories with it?
It's been a hell of a ride. I mean, it's really great. I mean, I love it and continue to love it. And we also have had the benefit of extraordinary folks, staff and partners who have helped all along the way and have made much of this possible. It's not something that, just two individuals alone can do. It takes a village, as they say. So yeah.
Yeah, that's what was nice. Maybe the lesson from this for me partly is the idea is it's kind of built in, like the master's students have, they develop their own master plan. And I remember in Western, you did your own statement of educational objectives. Basically, you designed your own major. And I always thought that, in addition to just the content that you learn along the way, the ability to say, hey, this is where I want to go, and this is how I might put things together to get there, is probably the most valuable thing you can learn from an education. And what I like about it, and that's why I like interdisciplinary studies and this whole, because if you just always prioritize, to me, it's in a way it's freedom. And so partly that is social freedom to work with people. It's a collaborative freedom in a way. But then it's kind of nice. You only have yourself to blame if things go wrong, and that's kind of a nice place to be. You don't want to get to the end of your life and say, oh, what could it have been, right? Because I did my, nose to the grindstone job that I really didn't like for 30 years or 40 years, and then went on and all the decisions were made for me. The very fact that, who knows where it will lead, but the idea that you should control your, or follow your interests, I think that's been a critical piece of all this. And obviously, and you can kind of tell, like the people along the way, I mean, the partnerships, and you're a great example.
Exactly.
I mean, and, we're thinking like, oh my God, retiring in 2025, and then it will be without us, but it's such a strong foundation of amazing, people. Just think of anybody on the Dragonfly staff. They're just, to me, that's the superhuman. And what everybody accomplishes in a relatively small team, and a structure that was really just organically grew over time. It's just been like she said, it's been a hell of a ride. We can talk later about AIP and GFP and the from the post. Really, that would be like the post Dave Jenneke, or once we started with Dave Jenneke and Thane Maynard, and where everything that went from there. That might be a part 2.
That would be amazing for sure. And yeah, the community, the Dragonfly community is such a wonderful group, and it is like it's filtered for these people that are that once they get a taste of the freedom, the excitement, following their own interests, the community, the humanity of it all. And it's just amazing that you two founded this thing with all these people, as you said, through the years and these inspirational moments, and have gotten it to where it is. So yeah, thanks for that. It's really amazing. It's good, you, Lynn, that you moved from Maryland and to Miami. Your dad gave you that conversation. It's funny how life, ends up the way it does. But thanks so much for joining for the conversation. And yeah, hopefully we can do a round 2 for sure.
All right. Well,
Thank
thanks
you
for everything, of course, all things Dragonfly.
Yep. All right. Talk to you all soon. Take care.
Bye.
Yep. Bye. Hi there, folks. Just one more thing before you head on out. If you have a moment, as I mentioned at the beginning, I would love to hear in what ways you are finding this podcast useful, how you listen, what you would like to hear more of, less of, etc. Please feel free to send me any and all feedback, any ideas for guests, etc. to Kevin Madison at my email, which is mattiskc@miamioh.edu. That's spelled MATTESKC @miamioh.edu. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.